The sky above Valyria was a swirl of colors, bright and alive like ribbons dancing in the wind. The city's towers reflected the light, and the streets below buzzed with life. People of many kinds, aliens of different shapes, sizes, and colors, walked together in harmony. Children laughed as they played, merchants sold their goods, and artists painted the streets with vibrant designs. Princess Lyra, the youngest daughter of the royal family, stood on the balcony of the palace enjoying the view. Her long silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her violet eyes scanned the city below. Today was supposed to be peaceful. Today was meant to celebrate unity and friendship among the people of Valyria, but peace, as it often does, did not last. A sudden, deafening roar filled the air. At first, Lyra thought it was part of the festival, a celebration of sound. But then the ground shook beneath her feet, and a shadow covered the sun. She gasped. From the horizon, massive warships descended, their black and red forms blotting out the sky. They were unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Sharp edges, glowing weapons, and engines that pulsed with a threatening rhythm. The palace alarm rang. Guards rushed past her, shouting orders. Princess Lyra. Take cover! Lyra's heart pounded. She turned to the palace hall and saw her parents, King Varen and Queen Solara, already gathering their advisors. The royal family had prepared for many threats, but nothing like this. Reports came in quickly. The invaders were striking every city at once, fast and merciless. People screamed in the streets as massive weapons fired. Buildings shook and cracked. Vehicles exploded. Even the brave Valyrian defenders struggled against the enemy. The sound of battle filled the air, metal clashing, explosions booming, and desperate cries echoing everywhere. Lyra wanted to run, to hide, but she could not leave her people. Her training had prepared her for emergencies, but nothing could prepare her for this. She gripped the balcony rail and scanned the battlefield. That's when she saw something she could hardly believe. A figure moved among the chaos, a human. He was unlike any human she had seen before. Tall, strong, and precise in his movements, he fought with skill and courage. Weapons that would have destroyed most defenders fell harmlessly before him. He seemed to anticipate the enemy's every move, dodging attacks, striking at their weak points, and helping injured soldiers to safety. Lyra froze. Something about him was familiar. The way he moved, the determination in his eyes, it was like a memory long buried. Then it hit her. She remembered a small human boy who had visited Valyria years ago. A boy who had laughed with her under the palace gardens, who had shared stories of his home planet Earth. His name, Ethan. Could it really be him? Her heart raced as she watched him. Even in the middle of chaos, he smiled briefly at a young Valyrian soldier, encouraging him to keep fighting. Lyra's mind struggled to process what she was seeing. This human, this hero, was saving her people, and she knew without a doubt that it was the boy she had once called a friend. Ethan noticed her at that moment. Their eyes met across the battlefield. Lyra felt her legs go weak. He was older now, stronger and more confident, but she recognized that spark, the same curiosity and courage that had made him special as a child. The moment was brief. Ethan turned back to the fight, moving with speed and intelligence that seemed almost impossible. He carried injured soldiers out of harm's way, dismantled enemy weapons, and led counterattacks that bought Valyria precious time. Lyra's guards approached, ready to pull her back to safety, but she could not move. She wanted to scream his name, to run to him, but she was rooted to the spot. Her mind replayed memories from years ago. Ethan showing her Earth toys, laughing at her attempts to speak English, promising to return one day. She had thought those days were gone forever, and now, here he was, standing in the middle of a war zone, protecting her people. "Your Highness, please move," one of the guards shouted. But Lyra could not answer. She could not speak. She was frozen, staring at the human who had become a hero. The enemy was relentless. They fired energy blasts that tore through the palace gardens. Lyra's balcony shook and a piece of the railing crumbled beneath her hand. Guards shouted and tried to form a protective line, but even they struggled against the invaders' advanced technology. Ethan appeared at the edge of the palace courtyard. With a quick motion, he hurled a device that exploded into a blinding flash, disabling a group of attacking drones. He moved like lightning, precise and controlled, rescuing several soldiers in the process. Each action he took was thoughtful, deliberate, and fearless. Lyra finally found her voice. "Ethan," she cried, though she did not know if he could hear her. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. Her heart ached with a mix of fear, relief, and wonder. Ethan glanced up. His eyes widened slightly as he recognized her. For a moment, the war seemed to pause for him. He dropped to one knee to shield an injured soldier, but his gaze never left Lyra. A small, almost invisible smile crossed his face, a smile that said he remembered her too. Then the reality returned. The battle raged on. Ethan jumped back into the fight, cutting through enemy ranks with skill and determination. Lyra watched, heart in her throat. She wanted to help, but she had no weapons, no training for this kind of battle. All she could do was observe and hope. The palace shuddered again as the invaders fired a massive energy beam. Buildings crumbled and dust and debris filled the air. Lyra coughed, covering her face, but she kept her eyes on Ethan. He was guiding the Valyrian defenders, coordinating their movements, and using clever tricks that only someone with human ingenuity could imagine. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was only minutes, the enemy retreated. Their warships lifted off, leaving behind a city in ruins but still standing. The defenders cheered, but it was a hollow sound in the midst of destruction. Soldiers helped the injured, fires burned, and cries of loss echoed through the streets. Lyra stood trembling on the balcony, her heart still racing. She could hardly believe what had just happened. And then, amidst the chaos, she saw him again. Ethan. He walked toward the palace, helping those he passed. His face was calm, determined, but his eyes met hers once more. She could not move. She could not speak. All she could do was stare at the human who had saved her world. The princess, once filled with fear, now felt a strange mixture of emotions. Shock, awe, and something deeper, something she could not name. She realized that this human, this boy she had known as a child, had become more than she could have imagined. He was not just a friend. He was a hero, and he had returned to Valyria in the moment they needed him most. Lyra's hands gripped the balcony railing tightly. She had frozen, not in fear but in recognition. Recognition of a bond she thought was lost. Recognition of the human spirit that had crossed the stars to protect her people. Recognition of the courage that could change the course of worlds. And in that frozen moment, Lyra understood that her life and the future of Valyria was about to change forever. The city of Valyria lay in ruins. Smoke rose from shattered buildings, fires burned in the streets, and the air was heavy with dust and the cries of those who had lost their homes. Yet among the devastation, hope lingered, and that hope walked, firm, determined, and human, through the ruined streets. Ethan moved carefully, scanning for survivors and helping those in need. His eyes, sharp and alert, caught every movement, every flicker of danger. Even after years of training and combat, he felt the weight of responsibility. He was here for one reason: to protect Valyria, and most importantly, to protect the princess. Lyra watched from her palace balcony, still frozen in disbelief. Her violet eyes followed Ethan as he moved through the chaos with unwavering purpose. Her mind raced with memories from years ago. Memories of a small, curious boy with bright eyes and endless energy. He had always been clever, always brave in little ways that seemed ordinary at the time. Now, standing amidst destruction and chaos, Ethan was extraordinary, and she realized that the boy she had once called a friend had grown into someone capable of extraordinary deeds. The palace courtyard had become a temporary refuge for survivors. Soldiers and citizens alike moved through it, tending to the wounded and salvaging what they could from the rubble. Lyra finally descended the steps, her hands shaking slightly. She was still in her royal attire, but that did not matter. The usual barriers of protocol felt insignificant compared to the reality of what had just happened. Ethan paused mid-stride as he noticed her approaching. For a brief moment, the battle-hardened hero seemed to soften. He dropped a small healing device and approached her carefully, as if afraid that she might disappear again. "Lyra," he said, his voice calm but full of emotion. It's really you." Lyra's lips trembled. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she nodded slowly, her eyes wide. "Ethan, I can't believe it," she whispered. He gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. "I never thought I'd see you again like this, but we don't have much time. Are you okay?" She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I'm managing, but Ethan, why are you here?" Ethan's expression grew serious. "I've been tracking this enemy for months. I knew they would come for Valyria. I couldn't let them destroy your world. I had to be here." Lyra's heart pounded. She had always admired humans for their courage, but seeing it firsthand was something else entirely. This human, this boy from her childhood, had crossed the stars, entered a war zone, and risked his life to protect her people. And yet, he did it without hesitation, without pride, without expecting reward. She remembered the small boy who had laughed with her under the palace gardens, the one who had shared stories of Earth and promised to return. She had never thought those promises would matter in the grand scheme of the universe. But now, standing before her, Ethan's words and actions proved that some promises could survive time, distance, and even war. "Ethan, I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice soft. He shrugged lightly, as if it were no big deal, though she could see the morning after the invasion felt unreal. Smoke still rose from the shattered towers, streets were littered with debris, and the cries of the injured echoed through the city. Yet, amidst the destruction, life moved on. People of Valyria began to rebuild, and their hope rested on two figures, Princess Lyra and the human hero Ethan. Inside the palace, the war council gathered. Lyra stood at the center, her posture firm, but her mind was heavy. The attack had left Valyria vulnerable. Reports indicated that the enemy's main force was still near the planet's outer orbit, planning their next strike. Every advisor around the table argued about strategies, weapons, and defenses, but Lyra found herself lost in thought. Ethan, sitting across from her, listened quietly. His eyes scanned the reports, maps, and holographic displays. Unlike the Valyrian generals, he did not speak in long speeches or rely solely on brute force. Instead, he focused on patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities that others overlooked. Lyra watched him, her admiration growing. "You need to understand one thing," Ethan said, finally breaking the silence. "They are powerful, yes, but they are predictable. They rely too much on technology and underestimating the courage of those who fight for their homes. That's where we can win." One of the generals frowned. "A human strategy? You expect us to follow the ideas of someone who does not even know our planet fully?" Ethan looked at him calmly. "I know your planet more than you think. I've studied your cities, your defense systems, and most importantly, your people. And I know that Valyrians are brave, clever, and strong. We just need to guide that strength in the right way." Lyra's hand rested on the table. She had been silent until now, observing both sides. "He is right," she said firmly. "We cannot fight like the enemy expects. We need creativity, not just strength. Ethan's plan, it might be what we need." The generals exchanged uneasy glances, but none could deny the results of the previous day. Ethan had saved countless lives with his strategies, and his quick thinking had prevented the total destruction of Valyria. Over the next few hours, Ethan and Lyra worked together. Maps of the city, orbital scans, and enemy activity patterns were spread across the table. Ethan pointed to weak points in the enemy's formations and suggested ways to protect key locations. Lyra added knowledge about her people's skills and abilities, guiding Ethan on how best to use Valyria's defenders. "We'll need small teams," Ethan explained. "Groups that can move fast, strike precisely, and then disappear before the enemy can react. We'll use their own weapons against them whenever possible, and we'll focus on their communications so we can disrupt their coordination." Lyra nodded. "We can also use the city itself, the towers, the bridges, even the underground tunnels. Valyrians know these places. We can turn our home into a trap for the enemy." The work continued late into the evening. Lyra and Ethan grew closer as they collaborated. She remembered the days they had spent as children, exploring the palace gardens, sharing stories and dreaming of adventures beyond their world. Now, those dreams had returned in a different form, one that was urgent, dangerous, and necessary. As night fell, the two stood on the palace balcony overlooking the city once more. Fires still burned in some areas, but lights were returning to homes. Citizens cautiously emerged from shelters, assessing the damage and helping one another. "Do you ever sleep?" Lyra asked, a hint of a smile on her face. Ethan laughed softly. "Not much. I sleep when I can. But right now, there's too much to do." He looked at her seriously. "And besides, I need to make sure you are safe." Lyra felt a warmth in her chest at his words. "I think we are stronger together than apart," she admitted. "I trusted you as a child. And now, I trust you again." Ethan smiled, but his eyes remained focused on the city. "Trust is good. But action is better. Tomorrow we begin training the defenders. Small units, quick movements, and learning to use the city to their advantage. We cannot wait for the enemy to strike again. They will not give us time." The next morning, Lyra oversaw the first training exercises. Valyrian soldiers, many of whom were shaken by the previous attack, gathered in the palace courtyard. Ethan guided them, demonstrating new tactics. He encouraged teamwork, quick thinking, and using the environment to their advantage. At first, the soldiers struggled. They were used to conventional combat, formations, weapons, and direct engagement. But Ethan's methods were different. He taught them to anticipate enemy movements, to adapt in seconds, and to remain calm even under pressure. Lyra joined the exercises using her agility and combat skills to demonstrate techniques. Together, she and Ethan moved among the soldiers, correcting mistakes, offering encouragement, and showing the power of combined human and Valyrian ingenuity. By midday, the transformation was evident. Soldiers who had once cowered or hesitated now moved with confidence. Small teams could navigate obstacles, set traps, and communicate silently to coordinate attacks. Lyra watched with pride as her people became not just survivors, but fighters capable of facing the invaders. During a break, Lyra and Ethan reviewed the enemy's patterns again. "Their main force is orbiting here," Ethan said, pointing to a holographic map of space. "They're waiting for another strike. But I've noticed something. They have a central weapon system. If we destroy it, their power will collapse, and we might be able to drive them off entirely." Lyra's eyes widened. "A central weapon system? Where is it?" "It's heavily guarded," Ethan replied, "and it's designed to take out entire cities. But there's a way. We can infiltrate, disable it, and then escape. It will be dangerous, but not impossible." Lyra's heart raced. She understood the risk, but she also understood that without action, Valyria would fall. "Then we do it," she said firmly. "We cannot wait. My people's lives depend on it." Ethan nodded. "I thought you'd say that. We'll need a small, skilled team. Soldiers we trust, and of course you." Lyra felt a shiver of excitement and fear. She had trained her whole life for moments like this, but facing the enemy's most powerful weapon was unlike anything she had imagined. Still, with Ethan by her side, she felt a strange sense of calm. The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Teams were selected, weapons and equipment were distributed, and simulations were run over and over. Lyra and Ethan worked tirelessly, ensuring that every detail was perfect. During a quiet moment, Lyra asked, "Ethan, why did you come back? Why risk your life for a planet that is not even yours?" Ethan looked at her, his expression serious but gentle. "Because I remembered something important. When we were children, we promised to help each other no matter what. And I promised I would never forget you or this world. Some things, some people, are worth crossing the stars for." Lyra felt her chest tighten. She had not realized how deeply she had missed him, how much his presence mattered to her. She wanted to say something, to thank him, but words failed. She simply nodded, letting her trust and gratitude show in her eyes. Finally, the preparations were complete. The small teams were ready, and the plan was in place. Lyra and Ethan stood, together, looking out at the city they had fought to protect, knowing that the next battle would decide the fate of Valyria. "We can do this," Ethan said quietly. "We have to." Lyra's hand found his. We will, she replied. Together. As the sun rose, casting light over the recovering city, the princess and the human hero prepared for the fight that would not only save their world but prove that courage, friendship, and ingenuity could overcome any enemy. The counterstrike had begun, not with weapons alone, but with the strength of hearts united, a plan forged in trust, and the unyielding belief that Valyria could be saved. And for the first time since the invasion, hope burned brighter than fear. The night before the mission was quiet, almost eerily so. The city of Valyria had recovered enough to stand again, but the wounds of battle were visible. Towers were cracked, bridges were damaged, and smoke still rose from some streets. Yet amidst the ruins, a sense of determination filled the air. Citizens had rebuilt small sections. Soldiers trained tirelessly, and leaders made final plans for what would be the most dangerous mission yet. Princess Lyra stood on the palace balcony, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. The enemy stronghold loomed in the distance, a fortress of black metal, glowing weapons, and dark energy fields. She felt a mixture of fear and resolve. Beside her stood Ethan, calm and focused, his hands resting on the straps of his equipment. "This is it," Lyra said softly. "The moment that will decide everything." Ethan nodded. "It's dangerous. One mistake and we could lose everything. But I believe in our plan. I believe in our team. And I believe in you." Lyra swallowed hard. She had trained her whole life for moments like this. But nothing had prepared her for the intensity of facing an enemy who could destroy entire cities with a single strike. Yet with Ethan beside her, she felt ready. The team moved out quietly, slipping through the shadows of Valyria's streets toward the outskirts where transport ships waited. Small, agile vessels capable of avoiding enemy detection carried them toward the fortress. Lyra watched the city recede below, thinking of the lives depending on them. Families, children, soldiers, all counted on their success. Ethan briefed the team once more. "Remember, the goal is to reach the central weapon system and disable it. We avoid unnecessary fights. We use stealth and precision. Trust each other and trust the plan." Lyra glanced at him. "We trust you," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. The ships lifted off, moving through the planet's atmosphere toward the enemy stronghold. The black fortress grew larger with every mile, its glowing defenses visible from space. The team stayed silent, each member preparing mentally for what lay ahead. Finally, they landed on the edge of the fortress, hidden among jagged cliffs. Ethan led the group, moving with careful, deliberate steps. Lyra followed, her senses sharp, her training guiding her every move. The enemy had set traps, but Ethan anticipated many of them. He guided the team through narrow corridors, over energy barriers, and past patrols. At one point, a powerful laser sweep threatened to expose them. With quick thinking, Ethan directed Lyra to use a reflective surface to redirect the beam, allowing the team to pass undetected. Lyra marveled at his ingenuity. The boy she had known as a child had grown into a hero whose mind worked like a machine, calculating, adapting, and solving problems with incredible speed. Hours passed as they navigated the fortress. Each step was filled with tension. Guards appeared unexpectedly. Strange machinery hummed with energy, and the fortress itself seemed alive, reacting to their presence. Yet the team moved with unity, each member trusting Ethan's leadership and Lyra's guidance. At one critical moment, Lyra and Ethan reached a heavily guarded chamber, the core of the enemy's weapon system. Massive machines glowed with energy, cables snaking across the floor, and alien guards patrolled methodically. "This is it," Ethan whispered. "We disable the core and their power will collapse. But we have to be careful. One alarm and the entire fortress will be alerted." Lyra nodded. "I'm ready." They moved into position. Ethan disabled security devices with precise timing, while Lyra covered the team, using her agility to quietly neutralize guards without drawing attention. Their teamwork was seamless, a combination of human ingenuity and Valyrian skill. Suddenly, an alarm blared. A hidden sensor had detected movement. Red lights flashed, and the fortress seemed to roar to life. Guards poured into the chamber, weapons raised. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Go, move quickly!" he shouted. Lyra leaped into action, her speed and strength unmatched. She dodged laser fire, rolled under barriers, and struck with precision. Ethan worked at the weapon core, manipulating controls and rerouting energy flows. The rest of the team fought to hold off the guards. buying time for the critical task. One guard slipped past the team and lunged at Lyra. With a swift motion, she used her environment, a loose pipe, to knock him back, sending him crashing into the wall. She barely had time to catch her breath before another guard appeared. She glanced at Ethan. He was close to completing the sabotage, but he needed just a few more seconds. Lyra fought fiercely, every movement a mix of grace and power. She realized that this was not just about strength. It was about strategy, courage, and trust. She trusted Ethan completely, and that trust gave her the confidence to face enemies far stronger and faster than she could alone. Finally, with a satisfying beep, Ethan shut down the weapon system. Lights dimmed, energy flows stopped, and the hum of power ceased. The enemy's central weapon was disabled. The team cheered quietly, but their victory was not complete. The fortress was still filled with guards, and escape would not be easy. "Move out," Ethan commanded. "We go fast, we go smart, we go together." Lyra led the team through the corridors, using secret passages and clever maneuvers Ethan had identified earlier. Guards pursued them, but they used traps, distractions, and teamwork to stay ahead. At one point, a heavy door threatened to block their path. Lyra and Ethan worked together, using both strength and strategy to open it just in time. Finally, they reached the exit. Outside, transport ships waited, engines humming. The team sprinted toward the vessels as alarms blared behind them. Enemy patrols fired, but the ships lifted off just as the first shots were fired, carrying them away from the fortress. As they soared into space, Lyra looked back at the dark, looming fortress. It was no longer a symbol of fear. It was a defeated enemy, a testament to courage, teamwork, and clever strategy. Ethan sat beside her, catching his breath. "We did it," he said quietly. "We stopped their weapon. Valyria is safe, for now." Lyra smiled, relief flooding her. "We did it together." The human hero and the alien princess shared a brief moment of quiet pride, knowing that their combined strength had turned the tide of the battle. The team around them cheered, tired but victorious. Soldiers who had doubted themselves now saw what could be accomplished when humans and Valyrians worked as one. As they traveled back to the city, Lyra reflected on the journey. She had been frozen in disbelief when she first saw Ethan fighting for her people, but now she understood the depth of his courage, the brilliance of his mind, and the loyalty that had brought him across the stars. He was not just a hero. He was her childhood friend, a partner, and a symbol of hope for their world. Back in the city, people celebrated cautiously. Fires were extinguished, the injured were cared for, and citizens came together to rebuild. Word spread of the human who had infiltrated the enemy fortress and disabled their most powerful weapon. Cheers rang through the streets, not just for Ethan, but for all who had fought alongside him. Lyra stood on the balcony once more, looking out at her city. The sky was calm, stars shining above. She knew the battle was not entirely over. Enemies could return and the scars of war would remain. But for the first time since the invasion, hope felt strong and real. Ethan approached her, standing silently at her side. She looked at him, gratitude and admiration in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything," Ethan smiled. "No thanks needed. We did this together. And remember, I promised I would never forget this world." "I always keep my promises." Lyra's heart swelled. The boy she had once known had grown into a hero who could inspire a planet. But more than that, he was her friend, her ally, and someone she could trust with her life. The night deepened and the city of Valyria slowly quieted. But the bond between the princess and the human hero had grown stronger than ever. They had faced danger together, relied on each other's strengths, and proved that courage, ingenuity, and friendship could overcome even the most powerful enemies. As they looked out at the stars, Lyra knew that no matter what challenges came next, she would not face them alone. With Ethan by her side, the future of Valyria was bright and hope would always shine, even in the darkest of times. Lieutenant Adrian Kane had walked many miles across the ruins of Kalira 7, but today the silence felt different. The air shimmered faintly in the late afternoon sun, scattering over the cracked stone towers and long-forgotten streets. Broken vehicles lay half-buried under sand, their metal frames twisted like frozen cries of a civilization long gone. Adrian adjusted his helmet and looked around. He had been sent to map this area for salvage opportunities. But there was something about the city, something that felt alive even in its decay. He was about to turn back when he saw her. A figure moved gracefully among the crumbling buildings. Adrian froze, squinting against the sunlight. At first he thought it might be a hologram, some leftover security program from the ancient civilization. But the figure walked carefully, almost thoughtfully, as if she were reading the ruins the way others read books. Her movements were deliberate and fluid, entirely human in appearance, yet there was an alien quality about her. Her hair shimmered faintly under the sunlight, a color he had never seen, somewhere between silver and gold, and her eyes reflected the sky like deep pools of knowledge. Adrian's instincts told him to be cautious. His hand went to the sidearm at his hip, though he doubted she meant harm. There was no weapon visible, and her posture suggested curiosity more than threat. "Hello?" he called, his voice breaking the stillness of the ruined city. The woman stopped and turned slowly. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, Adrian felt as if she could see through him. The air between them seemed to vibrate, almost like a faint hum, though he could hear nothing. She tilted her head slightly and smiled, a small, knowing smile that suggested she had been expecting him. "I wondered when someone would come," she said softly, her voice melodic, almost like music. "You are human, yes?" "Yes," Adrian replied, lowering his hand. "Lieutenant Adrian Kane, and you are?" "Call me Alara," she said simply. She looked around at the ruins and then back at him. "I have been here for a long time waiting. Or perhaps watching. Time feels different when you are alone." Adrian studied her. She spoke with authority, but there was no threat in her tone. Something about her made him feel both uneasy and fascinated. He wanted to ask her who she was, why she was here, and what she wanted, but all those questions seemed too small. "Are you from here?" he asked cautiously. Alara's eyes softened as she considered him. "From here, perhaps, or perhaps from somewhere else entirely. The lines are blurred." She stepped closer, her movement elegant, almost like she was gliding. "I have seen many come and go, Adrian Kane. Most do not stay." "You are different." Adrian felt a shiver run down his spine. How did she know his name? He hadn't mentioned it aloud yet. He glanced at the small identification patch on his suit and realized she must have read it from a distance. But that seemed impossible. I don't understand," he admitted. "How do you know my name?" Alara's gaze softened further, as if she understood his confusion. "Some things cannot be explained quickly. Some things must be discovered. But there is no danger here, Lieutenant. Only choices." Adrian took a cautious step forward. "Choices?" "Yes," she replied. She pointed to the crumbling towers around them. This city was built for learning, for watching, for understanding. Those who came here sought knowledge, or perhaps power. Some lost both. Some became something else entirely. I am here to observe, to guide. Sometimes to test. Adrian's mind raced. He had read about lost alien civilizations, about ruins like this one. But he had never met anyone or anything like Alara. Her calm confidence. Her strange aura made him feel small, yet strangely capable. He felt drawn to her, but also wary. "Test me?" he asked. "What kind of test?" Alara smiled again, a small curve of her lips that seemed almost sad. "Not a test in the way you think, but a question that might determine much. I will ask it, but only if you are ready, and not before," Adrian frowned. "And how will I know I'm ready?" "You will feel it," she said, her voice calm and certain. "Some questions require more than answers. They require understanding, insight, courage, and sometimes art." Adrian swallowed. He had faced danger before, combat, storms, collapsed tunnels, but nothing like this. This was something else. Something that made him question what he knew about the universe, about humans, and about himself. "All right," he said finally. "I'm ready." Alara's eyes softened once more, and she nodded. But then, without another word, she turned and started walking away. Adrian blinked in confusion and surprise. "Wait," he called. "Where are you going?" "I thought you were going to—" She paused at the edge of a collapsed bridge, looked back over her shoulder, and for a brief moment their eyes met again. Then she spoke, her voice soft but clear. "Before I leave, please answer one question." Adrian froze. His heart raced. He had no idea what the question was. He had no idea if he could even answer it. And yet in that instant he felt that the question mattered more than anything he had ever faced in his life. I'll try," he said, though she had already begun to step over the ruins, moving toward a bright, shimmering horizon that seemed almost unreal. "Alara," he called again, but she didn't turn back. She simply moved, her figure blending with the shimmering light ahead. Then before he could take another step, she vanished, like mist evaporating under the sun. Adrian stood alone among the ruins, the wind brushing against his suit, carrying faint echoes of her voice. He looked around, but there was no trace of her. Only the ruins, the empty streets, and the faint hum of energy that seemed to linger in the air. He clenched his fists. "What was that?" he muttered to himself. The question she had asked or would ask seemed to weigh on him, pressing on his mind. He had to find her again. He had to understand. Adrian spent the rest of the day combing the area, scanning for any trace of her. He explored the towers, the half-buried halls, and even the old transport hubs. Every corner, every shadow seemed to whisper her name. But she was nowhere to be found. As night fell, the ruins glowed faintly under the twin moons of Kalira 7. Adrian set up camp, sitting on a crumbled wall, staring at the horizon where she had disappeared. His mind replayed every moment, every word. The mystery of Alara, her question and her strange connection to him consumed his thoughts. He realized then that this was no ordinary encounter. She was extraordinary, and somehow he knew she had chosen him for something important. Something that could change everything. The night passed slowly. Stars shimmered above the ruins, painting the sky with streaks of silver and blue. Adrian kept watch, his mind alert, his senses tuned to any sign of her. He didn't know when or where she would appear again, but he knew one thing. He could not let her go unanswered. Before sleep finally claimed him, he whispered into the quiet night, "Ilara, whatever your question is, I will find you. I will answer it." And somewhere beyond the horizon, Adrian felt a faint echo of her presence, as if she had heard him, as if the universe itself had acknowledged his promise. The ruins of Kalira 7 remained silent, but Adrian knew this was only the beginning.